right, well, welcome back to the Build Propulsion Lab. I'm Brian Demers, and I'm learning how to use the mute button today. So we are here at Community Over Code, and I think I just recorded 2 interviews with the mute on. So we're gonna redo this. Here I'm joined with Shekhar Rajak from Apple, and we're gonna talk about developer experience. So welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for inviting me in this session. I'm pretty excited to be here. I'm coming from India just for this conference, and yeah, it has been great experience here. Also, currently I'm working as a software developer engineer in Apple, working on multiple open source with communities as well. So yeah, very excited.
Great, and this is your first time in Denver?
Yeah, first time in US. So.
Well, welcome, yeah. So have you been to an ApacheCon elsewhere before?
So I participated in 2020, but that time it was virtual.
Ah, yes, everything was virtual, right? Yeah. Well, great. So you have some thoughts on developer experience. Why don't you share them? Developer experience, I think, means something different to a lot of people. So what does it mean to you?
Okay, well, software development in open source is growing rapidly in a very fast pace, and a lot of new projects are coming up. The more interesting part is nowadays software engineers have more options, more alternatives. So let's say in one software or one framework they realize some of things are missing, they might switch to another option or alternative tool. But I believe being a open source developer, it is very important to deep dive into the code base, check what is missing, why it is missing. If it is as per the design, then we can move on. But if we think that that can be implemented or that can be plug and play kind of thing where we can build a new module and use it there, that would be better and more interesting. And in that way, we will contribute to open source and make it more powerful.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mentioned this earlier when we recorded the show the first time. But somebody a couple days ago mentioned about deleting software, replacing components with newer components, newer versions of open source components, which is a great way to sort of both move your code base forward, keep things more modern, and improve the lives of developers, right?
Yeah. So I have one analogy. So recently I heard this speech, the historical iconic speech from John F. Kennedy, where he want every person to contribute to public service and civic duties. And I feel that that is relevant for a community like open source community as well, where the statement from him was, ask not what country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. And that is pretty much relevant for us being a community in open source. So it should look like this. Ask not what free software or open source softwares can do for you, ask what you can do for the free softwares to make it more impactful, more powerful, and make it cool stuff on top of it.
Well, that's great. I know I've seen people be turned away from a library because it didn't do exactly what they wanted it to. So maybe they went off and rewrote their whole own implementation where maybe it would have been more cost-effective or time-effective to just contribute a patch, right? So maybe add the feature you want to an existing library or fix a bug if it's bothering you, which would save a tremendous amount of developer effort, right?
Yep. As well as it is very important, and I believe we all should share our experience so that we talk about what went wrong and what went well and what we could have done better. That's helpful for audience as well, because there are many things we do proactively, and we should continue that and share our experience. As well as I also think about how the typical hiring process works. So let me tell you about law of diffusion of innovation, which tells about how the new innovative ideas or things that was built spread over the society over the time. So I feel that we are still in early adopter phase. Basically, we are able to adopt some of the open source contributors over IT industries, but still we are following some typical traditional way of hiring people. And the contribution that we have done during the open source program or platform are not recognized enough for during the hiring process. So that we need to standardize and how we should have one feedback or value the contribution.
I agree. I think there's a lot wrong with our current hiring process, especially when you have experience to back it up. Not everybody can handle or performs well in a 20-minute interview, right? I know I've interviewed lots of folks from junior engineers to senior folks, and it runs the gambit of the things you talk about. I don't think how to reverse a linked list is a good interview question. It's
Within a few minutes.
right within a few minutes, and then how is that relevant, right? Like you're not going to do that in a real day job. So I think we really need to reevaluate how we're doing this. And then folks from open source communities. I heard a story one time about the main developer for, I think it was SDK Man, couldn't get a job in the company that was one of the large shops that pretty much every developer in that company was using his software. But he wasn't good enough to be hired. Well, you're using his software. Clearly he's good enough. So I may be misremembering that story, but what do you think we can do to fix that?
Yeah, so the problem, evaluating the problem solving skill is very necessary during the interview process, but there are different ways of doing it. And the way we ask question is also important, and what question we ask that as well. All the IT industries have their own format and own checklist that they want to check on. But the most important part is how we find out problem solving skill. The data structure algorithm is very much important, but the fundamental is more important because everything builds top of the fundamental skills. Yeah, and I feel and contribution should be part of it, and as well as the how one have committed in GitHub, what are the collaboration and curiosity one person have for the open source and the software.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to fix all the hiring problems right now. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. All right, well, I want to thank you for being on the show. It's getting a little loud in the background, so we'll clear us out here. But yeah, so we'll be here for another couple hours on the Build Propulsion Lab. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Brian.